Johnson. I'm the program manager for our Cybersecurity for Small Business program, and I have on board here with me today Alec Muthig, who maybe you were in his webinar on Tuesday. I would bet there might be a little crossover. Alec is the training manager for the IT department at UW, and I would say one of our AI experts on campus. So as AI use expands for all of us, we want to talk about the cybersecurity angle of it today and talk about how to keep your business data protected as you interface with those AI chat assistants out there. So before we get started officially, this content was created by the Wyoming Small Business Development Center Cybersecurity for Small Business program. The program is fully funded by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And also just a word about the SBDC, if you don't know, we provide no-cost business advising for small business at any stage throughout Wyoming. So visit us at wyomingsbdc.org to connect with an advisor in your area. Access recordings of previous webinars, and we've got a ton of cybersecurity webinars up there, and also see future training opportunities. All right, so let's dig into our content today, talk about where we're going. We're going to talk about what information you should and should not share with those always convenient AI chat assistants, how private your data really is out there, and some simple settings and habits that can keep your business safe without slowing you down. These tips and cautions generally apply to most of the major functions in your business. You know, we generally just talk about chat assistants, but there's more and more data being crunched out there and financial data being crunched, although how well AI handles that task is still pretty much up in the air. So we'll probably talk mostly about narrative and chat sort of tasks today. So why is this topic important? You know, AI can draft social media posts, summarize policies, analyze numbers, and do it really quickly. But if we paste the wrong information or use the wrong settings, that same AI can keep or expose details we never meant to share out there. So our goal today is to help you safely use AI. And let's start off by talking about what information we should not put in. And I'm going to go through a quick list here, Alec, and then I'm going to ask you to throw in your thoughts about this. Of course, personal identifiable information, that PII out there, we don't want to feed names and social security numbers and birthdays and addresses, all that kind of personal stuff into AI. Personal health information, don't put that in there. Personal credit information, don't put in full credit card numbers or CVVs in there, of course. And those are all obvious. But now we get into some of the more subtle things. Because if you're developing a product that's based on IP, you don't want to feed your trade secrets or your pricing formulas and strategies or source code into that large language model out there, because then it becomes something that AI can feed on and draw from for other people's answers. And finally, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but when you, let's say you're going to paste a spreadsheet into an AI chat assistant, make sure it's scrubbed of any essential credentials like passwords or API keys or one-time codes. So let's take a quick step backward here and talk about what an AI chat assistant does. So basically, if you allow it, you are inputting information that is then fed into the large language model out there and becomes accessible to all kinds of AI chatbots to use. So basically, the information you give it, if you don't have your settings correct, can become knowledge to everyone else. So Alec, can you just kind of talk a little bit about how the large language model works and how your interaction with it becomes a part of it?
Sure, I won't get into the nitty-gritty of what a large language model is or really how it works, but a lot of times with our generative AI assistants, ChatGPT, right, or Google Gemini, or Anthropic's Claude AI, or Copilot by Microsoft. These are the big ones, but there are so many other bots out there. When we work with them, we have to input data, we have to give them something, we prompt them to do something. And oftentimes our prompts will have information in there that we're giving them instructions. And sometimes those instructions have very sensitive information in it. What you're doing then is you're allowing the AI to then, for lack of a better word, think through the data and instructions that you're giving them. It's being done typically on their servers. So it would be done on Claude's data centers or Microsoft's data centers, etc. And oftentimes that information is then being used to further train the AI so that the AI can become more and more intelligent, more capable, right? The more data that it consumes, the better it is. So that's the key to the issue, is that you're giving the AI information, and then you don't know exactly. It's a little opaque to a lot of people what is happening with that data. And I'm sure Paul's going to talk about this, the difference between maybe free versions and paid for versions, and how they might protect your privacy a little bit differently between them. But yeah, it's so easy to share data. If I give them a spreadsheet, for example, if I give ChatGPT a spreadsheet and ask it to forecast out, that spreadsheet might have sensitive information in it that I don't want to share. Here's a little tidbit too. Sorry, I get very talky. People can prompt once it's in the large language model, and part of that model, people can prompt the AI in a way to elicit or pull out the information you shared with it, or it can leak in responses to other people. And I can give some examples of that I've seen a little later if anyone is interested. Kind of a scary one too. I don't know if that answered your question, Paul.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and share your examples right now, and don't worry about how much time you're taking up. We have a half hour here, and
well, here's an example of a leak. So hopefully we'll talk about how paid models are a little safer, right? When you think of paying for an AI, it comes with probably stronger privacy controls and policies, and you can even have the ability to turn off that you're teaching the model, etc. But oftentimes it's still locked within your tenant or your domain or your organization. Now your organization might be 5 or 6 people, and you might all work together anyway, so it's okay. But the university, for example, is a large organization, and just because we're all part of the university doesn't mean we all have access to the same information. And some of it's private to some people; they have the need to know it, and other people don't. So even within our domain, there are privacy concerns within our organization. And I'll give you an example of a very popular presentation or meeting application, one that University of Wyoming uses, and we pay for it. It's an enterprise version, and it has artificial intelligence components to take meeting notes, to answer questions about the meeting. Super useful. Well, I gave a presentation and then pulled the artificial intelligence information from it, the transcript, and the first 10 minutes of the transcript were not from my session. AI had actually become confused and pulled somebody else's meeting notes into my meeting. Now, luckily, they weren't private or sensitive pieces of information, but they very well could have been. And I could have seen student information or health information in there. So that's an example of how a leak can occur where I wasn't asking for anything that was sensitive or private, but it provided it by accident.
All right, so that's the big red X, things we should not share. Let's talk about things that are generally okay and safe to share with AI. And the slide that I've dropped is what to be cautious about. So put that in the back of your mind, Alec, as we're looking at these that are maybe okay to share. Let's talk about some cautions after this. So yeah, generally public marketing copy and drafts of blogs or website information, that's probably generally fine to share, because think about it, you're going to probably be sharing it anyway if you're using an AI chat assistant to generate marketing content, which I would say most of the small businesses that we talk to, that's what they're using it for, is for generating marketing information. We've covered some of that in a webinar last week, and then we have another one coming up on November 13th to talk about how to further automate marketing tasks using AI chat assistants and also do market research, which I have used both Claude and ChatGPT to do. And boy, they do an amazing job. We have a market research center at the SBDC that can generate very detailed market information for you. It isn't as good as that, but if you basically want to know, hey, I'm looking at putting this business in this market, what's my competition there within a 50-mile radius? Boy, it is really great at generating that kind of stuff. A lot of people are using ChatGPT for, or not just ChatGPT, but AI assistants for HR tasks, especially generating job descriptions, which it is really good at. But if you're going to do that, don't put any potential candidate personal identifiable information in there as you're generating that job description. So here we talked a little bit earlier about pricing strategy and things like that, but a lot of people are also finding these assistants are really good at inventory management and just-in-time inventory management. But if you start plugging in your competitive pricing information in there and customer data, I've heard of people who are basically uploading their cash flow statements or balance sheets into a chat assistant and having them analyzed. If you're ever going to do that, you need to scrub your business identifiable information from any of those things. So people out there your competitors will find out a lot about you if you have uploaded those kinds of things into the large language model. And really look at those raw documents. If you have corporate documents, covenants or contracts or things like that, don't make sure you scrub and anonymize any information in there. And in fact, I know this was on my caution slide that disappeared. Don't think that you just have to slap a whole spreadsheet into a chat assistant. Just put in the cells that are pertinent to the analysis that you want it to do for you. I think we get really comfortable with technology and we're like, I'll just paste the whole or link the whole document to the chat assistant and have them summarize it. Be really careful about that identifiable information that you're putting in there. So Alec, I'll put this to you. What other information is okay to share? And we haven't gotten into the settings yet, but let's say that you don't have any of these privacy settings on and you're just using a free version, which you mentioned that earlier. If you're using a free version of a chat assistant, you likely do not have the option to not feed your data into the language model or into their cloud system. That will take an enterprise or a business class version of whatever chat assistant you're using. And we'll jump to that when we talk about settings, but let's talk about information that's okay to share generally, even with a free version, or what you should be cautious about, maybe not sharing.
And this might come as a surprise to everybody. My general rule of thumb, I'm just going to put it in one sentence instead of kind of parsing it out into specific types of data, et cetera. The general rule for me is if I wouldn't want to share something publicly on the web, I don't give it to an AI assistant. So if it's something I don't mind other people seeing publicly, then I will share it with ChatGPT or Gemini. But if there's any question about it, it gets changed or anonymized. I use aliases, right, for other names, and I would give that information to the AI. So that's my general rule. That can be, you could take that and do a lot of things. For example, I do a lot of marketing with it, and that doesn't require any anonymization really. I can just take my marketing information because that's all going to go into the public domain anyway. But other things, like we did a class with human resources here specifically on using AR to enhance performance reviews. And you have to be really careful when you're using it for performance reviews, because you're not just scrubbing out the name, you're also scrubbing out the position the person is in, the department they work for, the university name itself, because all of those things could be used to identify somebody. So we had to use a lot of aliases like employee 1 who is in position 2 at this department. And then we would go and after the output was created, would take the output and then put in the actual specific information in a Word document or something. We would change it afterwards. So we really stressed it in that case. And that's really I mean, we talk about personally identifiable information, but I think it goes well beyond that. I think there's a lot of other identifying information that once you put 5 or 6 pieces of those more simple bits of information together, it becomes identifiable. So you just have to be careful of all of that. That's generally, I think you did a great job covering what should and shouldn't be put in there. And there may be questions that people have, but the general rule, if you wouldn't put it on the web, I wouldn't give it to it free.
I was just gonna, before we get off of that, I was making this analogy to somebody not too long ago. It's almost like you're acting as a spy. You have to have a code book offline if you're dealing with personal information that, okay, that's this person's number, this is their position number, and you don't tell the chat assistant that, but after you get the data analysis, then you have to go back and plug in things from your code book so it makes sense to you.
And it sounds like it's a lot of work, and it is more work than just giving it the raw information without anonymizing or using aliases. But it's just a little bit more work for a lot more privacy, and I think it's worth it. I mean, privacy and security always adds some level of additional effort, and I think it's worth it here. One other thing that I was going to mention that a lot of people don't think about is AI assistance in meetings. So if you have the AI assistant, for example, in Zoom, the AI companion, or if you have Otter AI joining a meeting to take notes or something like that, you have to be careful because a lot of sensitive information is talked about in meetings, and you basically have to almost not have AI be part of the meeting. You have to let everybody know when AI is being used, so they know not to speak with private information, and then when AI is being turned off and disabled. And you can even kick out Otter AI at those times and then use that period to discuss sensitive information. So you have to be really careful of the meetings.
Yeah, I even think sometimes, we all say things out of context that would not play well on a public stage, and I think with those AI assistants in meetings, I worry about that sometimes. That everything we say is being documented, and it could possibly be pulled out and used somewhere else. Let's just skip ahead and talk about some of the tools and their privacy protections, at least that they advertise. And I'm going to put that caveat out there up front because although the intentions and terms and conditions are put out there by these companies, we still don't quite know exactly how they're using our information. So ChatGPT Enterprise Business API, this is the paid version. By default, they say that their information is not used to train its assistant. The information is encrypted, and there are admin controls that you can set to say, no, I don't want my information to be used for training. So that's ChatGPT. Okay, Alec, I'm not up on Microsoft 365 Copilot, and I know some of my colleagues are, and you're probably more in the know about this, but how is Microsoft 365 Copilot handling their data?
I know I teach a class in Copilot. So Copilot is interesting because Copilot comes in 3 flavors. So there's the free Copilot that you'll find embedded in the Edge browser or Windows 11, or you can go to the chatbot online and use the free versions. There's really not any protection there because, I mean, it's a free version. You're just throwing things into it. And then there's the paid version that's attached to home and family. And then there's the enterprise version, the pro version that can be added to business accounts. And then the full enterprise version, which is the highest level. The enterprise version is the one that the university has. And as you say here, the paid versions will keep the data within your tenant. What that means is essentially your domain, your organization. So the information from the University of Wyoming wouldn't be shared with the larger Copilot model to train it and couldn't be extracted out of that model, supposedly. I mean, I haven't looked at the structure of it, so I just believe what they tell me. And but still, if it's within your tenant, it still could be problematic. Like I said, the University of Wyoming is so large that that's a lot of people and who play a lot of roles, including students and faculty and administrators. So So there's a high level of protection, but I'll put a star next to that, but there's still other people in your tenant could potentially access that information.
Yeah. As always, use Alec's rule. If you wouldn't say it in public, don't tell your chat assistant about it. Pretty much the same thing with the Google Workspace and Gemini. Generally, if you're paying for it, you have a little more security and a little more control. If you're using it for free, then it's a free-for-all out there. And Claude, there are different consumer tiers it will ask you to choose whether you want to feed your data to the model or not. So I think that's pretty much the rule of thumb is if you're not paying for it, have more caution. If you're paying for it, you have more control generally.
Yes.
So when we look at those controls, I'm just going to give a couple examples of how to get into the settings. So let's say, for example, if you're using Claude, you're going to have a little profile circle. I think it's in the lower left, I believe, that will put you into the settings. And then you go to the privacy tab. And then on the bottom there where that green arrow is, you can tell it whether to allow the use of your chats and coding sessions to train and improve or not. And I would say generally, probably you want to set that to not if you have the option, if you want a higher degree of security. And that's Claude. ChatGPT is pretty much the same. Go down and click your little circle that has your initial in it, and that opens up the settings. And then you would go to the data controls tab and choose whether to improve the model for everyone or not. So it's generally just like a two-step process that you can do in there. And I'm sure it's similar for some of the other tools too. Alec, have you seen it where it's especially weird anywhere?
Nothing that I can think of right now where it's strange.
Okay.
But a lot of them have those same controls.
So I'm springing this on you because it was on one of the slides that got disappeared from my account here. The RAG framework or Retrieval Augmented Generation. Are you familiar with this format?
No, I might be, but not that I can think of.
Well, it's way too deep for what we're doing here today, but what it basically does is you can assign data sets for your chat assistant to access. So instead of go out to the cloud storage, large language model, whatever you're using, I want you to go to these direct documents from the federal government or my own documents in my organization and analyze from there. So instead of feeding my data to the model, it's actually reading directly from source documents. So it's much more secure. It's a little tricky. You're going to need somebody with a little bit of coding knowledge probably, but there are some good YouTube videos out there that step you through it a little bit. But this is another option rather than just feeding your data out there and hoping it stays sealed somewhere. You're actually using the chat assistant as a real robot to just go look at the data that you specifically feed it. So something to look into if you have a larger organization or you have huge amounts of data that you want it to look at. I think it's an interesting concept. It's not new. It's just not that well known yet because it's not push button at this point. So.
And this is a little bit different than that, but a similar idea. I'm sure some of you have used Google's NotebookLM, and NotebookLM uses Gemini as the AI model. But what you can do instead of having the AI look across the web for all sorts of information, which could include hallucinations or just misinformation or bad information, right? You get to drop into a notebook the only documents and spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations that you want it to work with. And so you can create a notebook, upload your information into it, say only work with these government documents, and now I'm going to question you about them and maybe create a timeline and other information based off of just those documents. So it's not quite the same thing, but could be very useful for limiting the type of input.
Yeah, we're getting some questions coming in here now. So Let me just do a quick, some guidelines, further guidelines here. Turn on multi-factor authentication wherever available. We're talking about organizations who may have several different staff members using a chat assistant in an enterprise situation. Really look at how you assign roles, and least privilege is always the best threshold, like who gets to do what and from where. If you have audit logs available, turn those on. Create an internal acceptable use policy for AI in your organization. I think we're still waiting for an official internal policy at UW. Alec, is that still in the works? And your staff, and continue to update your trading on those red, green, and yellow sorts of data that you can allow them to use in these models. We don't talk about third parties much, but I think it's really important because a lot of people are using AI to draft contracts and vendor agreements and terms and conditions. So be very careful with the information that you share with your vendors when you are contracting or releasing terms and conditions to them. So we talked about some do's and don'ts and keeping data private. We're going to dive into some of these questions that Tyler's been feeding me here. Just a quick plug for our Cybersecurity for Small Business program. This, of course, is an element of it. We do monthly webinars. We're jamming in 4 here in 2 months at the end of the month, so we're doing double duty. But visit our website, and it is underneath the services tab on our homepage. You'll see cybersecurity. There's a cybersecurity page there with a lot of resources that you can download. My contact information is there. We can do one-on-one advising with you on individual cybersecurity topics or do long-term engagements. Our program was extended for another year, so we're here until the end of August 2026 to help you out. All right, well, as Alex said, evolving industry. We're answering these questions the best we can, but we certainly don't have all the information, but hopefully we give you some ideas for looking for better solutions out there somewhere. And I want to thank everyone for attending. And I want to thank Alec especially for making a little extra time in our half hour here, and appreciate your thoughts and expertise as always. Please get in touch with us if you have any questions at the SBDC. There's my email, and we would be glad to get back to you and help you out with any cybersecurity issues. Thanks again, Alec. Thank you, Tyler, in the background, and we will talk to you all again soon. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.